Good morning, and welcome to Unpacking the Role of Audio Programmers in the Games Industry. I am Harleen. I specialize in game audio systems and tools. I currently work for Endreams Elevation, focusing on action adventure VR games. And before this, I worked at Tasman Audio, where I contributed to projects like Soundmaker and external projects like Helldivers 2. I'm also part of Limit Break Mentorship Program, which is a mentorship program for underrepresented communities in the UK games industry. And I just want to highlight that everything I'm sharing today is based on my experience working in the industry. And just like anyone else, I'm also learning every day. Right, so the reason why I'm talking about this is when I had a faint idea about what game audio programming was, there was still not a lot of clarity. And when I looked at job adverts, I got very confused as to what the role exactly is. So the hope with this talk is that anyone who is interested in pursuing game audio programming gets a better view of what the different kinds of tasks are. Right, so let's say you're someone who is interested in audio, music, games, and programming, and you hear the term game audio programming, and you're like, that sounds cool. Maybe I want to get into that. So you open your laptop to check out the job advert, and that's when you see this. It says, implement and optimize runtime audio systems using middleware and game engines, develop tools and features for sound designers, troubleshoot and resolve audio-related issues, proficient in C++, Wise, Fmod, Unity, custom engines, and scripting languages, experience with PC, console, and multiplayer game development, familiar with object-oriented programming in multi-thread environments, strong math skills, skilled in DSP and procedural audio techniques, knowledgeable in ambisonics, head-related transfer functions, and 3D spatialization concepts. So what do you see? What do you do when you see a job advert like this as a graduate who's never worked in the industry? You shut your laptop and you go play Minecraft. Because that just sounds crazy, and that's at least what I read. Well, a bit of a reality check. You can take job adverts like that with a grain of salt, especially companies that have never hired a game audio programmer before. They get a template and they just paste it there. And sometimes they don't even need all of the skills that they're mentioning in the job advert. And the role that you'll be doing can vary quite a lot based on the specific company that you're working at or the specific project that you're dealing with. And to get a better understanding, we can break the role down into specializations. So this is a commonly agreed upon breakdown where you have engine and DSP programmers, tools programmers, and systems programmers. So starting with engine and DSP programmers, many game companies now use off-the-shelf audio tools like Wise, Fmod, and Fabric. And if you're working in Unreal Engine, the native audio tool is amazing, so people use that. But there are a lot of companies that don't want to rely on third-party tools, so they will develop all of this from scratch. So if you end up in a position like that, you'll be working with this side of things. And larger companies may also use proprietary game engine, and they might use a third-party audio engine, in which case you'll be dealing with the interface and the integration layer as well. And if you're working for one of the middleware providers, or if you're working for a company that makes game engines, you could be dealing with these kind of things as well. And the core components include I/O, mixing, summing, and DSP, but also more game-specific engine programming like haptics. So haptics is a feedback mechanism where on the motors we have, on the controllers we have motors that are going to have frequency and amplitude modulation, and they're going to vibrate and give the sense of weight to the player. So an example of an interaction in a game could be pulling a bowstring, where as the character pulls the bowstring further, we might rattle it more and might do more frequency and amplitude modulation based on that. So haptics can be hand designed, where someone might go and design all the haptic assets by hand. Or you could be looking at a real-time audio-driven system where you might take an audio bus and drive the haptics motors based on that. Or you could be looking at offline assets where you analyze all the audio content that you have and you create haptics asset based on that. And when you're dealing with a task like this, you have to consider the multi-platform implications, especially when you're working on as low a level as this, because different platforms, for example, PlayStation versus another platform, are going to have different requirements. And an important thing here is to expose the parameters, because at the end of the day, someone is going to come and build a game upon this. So it has to be easy to use. So now that we've got a nice core foundation, you can get the sound designers to start bringing in the content into the game. And that's when you realize that asset implementation can be very time consuming. And that's when you start seeing that the sound designers are doing a lot of redundant work, which can be improved. And off-the-shelf audio tools are very good, but sometimes games are so big and they might not, and so different from each other, that they might not meet the specific needs of your game or your company. And this is where you have tools programmers come in. They analyze workflows and gather feedback from designers so they can make those more efficient. These people would usually have experience with audio content creation tools so they can understand the pain points that the designers deal with. And this is a role that's more common in larger studios, not so much in smaller and mid-sized companies. So let's look at an example. Animation-driven audio. And we can look at footsteps, because animation is going to be part of most games. And if your game has characters running around and they need to make footstep sounds, when that happens, the designer is going to go and do the following. They're going to find the animation in the editor. They're going to add a notifier, as we can see on the sequencer, the green notifier. They're going to assign the audio events and initialize the properties. And that's okay if you have 200 animations in the game. But what if you have 300,000 animations in the game? I don't want to do that job. I don't want to initialize notifiers on 300,000 animations. So if your scale is big, it's very difficult to do that. Consistency issues, if different people are doing this manual work, there can be issues with consistencies, we can introduce more errors, and just maintenance would be a nightmare. If animations change, someone has to go and fix these notifiers again. So what can we do about that? There are different solutions, but one of the solutions could be an offline analysis tool where we place these notifiers automatically. So what we're going to do is we're going to track bone position, angle, velocity, perform stride analysis while keeping in mind different traversal types like walk, run, climb. And at the end, we're going to get a tool where the sound designer can go select a bunch of animations, initialize events and properties, click a button, go drink some coffee, and this all is going to be done automatically. So amazing. Now we've got a nice foundation, and we've got some tools in, but we're not quite done. So the last piece of the puzzle is runtime systems catered to the specific game at hand. And the goal now is to bring audio to life in real time, where audio responds dynamically to the gameplay and provides important spatial cues to the player to enhance their experience or give them a competitive edge. And this is where you have audio systems programmers come in. This is an even more cross-disciplinary role than the other ones, where you're collaborating with different departments within the game studio on runtime audio systems. As said earlier, the focus here is on the specific game at hand instead of making generalized solutions. And these systems, it can be audio systems, dialogue systems, music systems, have to align with the narrative vision of the game, while keeping in mind resource management, because audio is just a part of the game, so we have to be mindful of that in terms of how much resources we're using. So let's look at another example. Sound propagation. So dealing with how sound travels and responds to the environment. And there are various methods to achieve this. And I just want to highlight that this is a very complex topic in itself, and we could be spending hours just chatting about this. So we're going to look at a very simple example. Right, so that's some programmer art. Starting with occlusion. So we draw a trace from the emitter to the listener. So the emitter is in room 1, the listener is in room 2, and when this trace happens, it reports back to us saying, hey, I've hit an obstacle, and this obstacle has this much density, and this is the material that the obstacle has. And based on that, we're going to say, okay, I want you to attenuate the volume and apply filtering to give the sense of muffled sound behind an obstacle. Next thing we'll be looking at is diffraction, which is how the sound travels around obstacles to the listener, where we can perform pathfinding. And we look at the angle at which the sound is going to the listener, and again apply filtering and attenuation based on that. And now you can see there is a virtual emitter at that door opening with the dotted line. Reflections. So this is to do with early reflections, where we're going to play early reflections and estimate the points in the room dynamically. Because when you're working in game audio, you have limited resources. So we have to be careful with how much resources we use. So typically, you'll have 4 estimated points in the room for early reflections. And of course, considering the late reverb, keeping in mind the geometry of the room and the size of the room. Physical materials it'll be part of the physics engine, which is going to inform what kind of reflections we have and how the sound gets muffled. So, as I said, there are a few ways to achieve this. One of them could be manual volume and portal placement, where you match up the size of volumes to the surrounding geometry, and then you connect those through portals so sound can leak between the two. Or another approach could be acoustic graphs, where you do a voxel-based approach for the game, where through an offline rendering process, you drop nodes around all the obstacles in the world, and then you do pathfinding on that in 3D space, and then you can get, for example, diffraction from that. Right, so now we've looked at a few different examples, and I want to go back to the job advert we saw earlier. Job adverts like that can feel very overwhelming. And I would say don't hesitate to ask for clarity. Game audio folks in general, from what I've seen, are very friendly and very approachable. So if you're ever confused, you can always ask people for clarity so they can guide you in the right direction. Unicorns, people who can do it all, do exist. And when you find a peak audio programmer in the games industry, that's exactly what they look like. A lot of the roles actually focus on audio systems programming, especially if you're going for a small and mid-sized studio. You're not going to be doing a lot of DSP work. DSP work might be just like 2% of the job, especially if they're using off-the-shelf audio tools where all that work is already done, and if they're using an off-the-shelf engine. And if your focus is on DSP and engine-side programming, that's great, because there are a lot of roles that are catered to specifically that, and you can focus on that and build upon the system side later. You don't have to know 110 ways of how to do sound propagation, for example. And the tools roles follow a similar path. So now that we've looked at some differences, there are some overlaps in skills and qualities. The games industry, and if you're working as an audio programmer in the games industry, has very unique collaborations. For example, physics. You could be working with the physics programmer who has made a vehicle physics simulation, and you will make a reactive audio system to work with that, which I think is pretty unique. Resource optimization. Typically, audio would get 10% of the budget of the whole game, so we can't go bonkers throwing convolution reverbs in the game. We have to be mindful of like how much resources we are using. And in my experience, fundamental understanding of any game and audio engine is good. I don't think the specific one matters. What matters more is you understand what they're trying to achieve and why they've taken the decisions that they have taken. Ability to evaluate effective audio in games with some experience with content creation. This one gets left out from a lot of job postings, but I think this is very important, that when you play a game, you can understand why it's working, and if it's not working, why it's not working. And having some experience with content creation, you don't have to be the next Ben Burt, but just having some experience would go a long way. And if you're situated in a game studio, and you're on a game team, the role is to support sound designers reach their creative vision. And you'll be working with an audio team, and the goal here is to create a great sounding game. Nobody is going to see the fancy tool that I've made to be used internally. People are going to experience the immersion that we're going to create through audio. So that's the important aspect if you're situated in a game team. Right, so if you heard all of that, and if that sounded cool to you, and you would like to learn more about this stuff, I have some recommendations. These are some nice books. Game Audio Programming covers a bit of all 3 pillars. Beep to Boom, if you have no idea about game audio, this is a great place to start. Game programming patterns, this is more about design patterns that are more specific to games, but it's good for learning anyway. And game engine architecture is for more T-shaped learning if you want to learn about other tech in games, but it has a great chapter on audio as well. So these are some good platforms that I'm going to come back to on the last slide. References. So I've made an online learning resources page that I plan to maintain in the future, and I'm going to keep adding stuff there. So all the stuff that you saw in the slides is going to be there as well. The slides are available online. There's my LinkedIn and email if you want to get in touch about anything. And that's everything. Thank you for listening.